As early as 1971, Reader's Digest published an article titled "What Sex Offenders Say About Pornography." The article cited the FBI's uniform crime reports, stating that between 1960 and 1969, the number of forcible rapes committed by males under 18 had increased by 86%. It could be concluded that some force impelling towards sex crime has been operating on younger males in the United States. The period described by the FBI was one in which Playboy magazine had been the principal form of widespread pornography in America, especially the kind that would find its way into the hands of underage males. Then in the 1980s, the Surgeon General C. Everett Koop called pornography a clear and present danger to American public health. And who could forget the disturbing warning given by serial killer Ted Bundy in his final interview with Dr. James Dobson just hours before his execution in 1989.
Listen, I'm no social scientist, and I haven't done a survey. I mean, I don't pretend that I know what John Q. Citizen thinks about this. But I've lived in prison for a long time now. And I've met a lot of men who were motivated to commit violence just like me. And without exception, every one of them was deeply involved in pornography, without question, without exception, deeply influenced and consumed by an addiction to pornography.
Despite these warnings, the so-called soft porn industry has been normalized in America, partly because some of the most powerful social and political leaders of the last half-century have given interviews and appeared in these magazines, helping to make them part of America's mainstream. Perhaps most famous was Jimmy Carter's Playboy interview in 1976 as a presidential candidate. While ultimately considered a political blunder, it undoubtedly sent a message of acceptability to the up-and-coming generation, to those who, in time, would end up running the country. As such, what sort of decisions would they make on behalf of America's women and children? It is also important to consider that the warnings from Ted Bundy and the Surgeon General were given years before the widespread use of the Internet, where today pornography is available to the masses like never before in history.
The Internet, I'm not trying to say is a real negative and dark thing. There's a lot of positive and good things coming out of the Internet, but people need to be aware of the dark element that the Internet provides to people. And it's in a very private, secret place, so people can keep can be anonymous. Whereas, 20, 30 years ago, to go to a porn shop, you'd have to go to a seedy part of town and people would recognize you. It's not that way anymore. It comes right into your house. And that's why I think it's so dangerous.
The idea that pornography doesn't really hurt anyone is a fallacious argument. How many marriages, how many tens of thousands, perhaps millions of people are hurting in their relationships because of pornography?
And the guy who watches porn is basically probably going to get addicted to the porn. And if he does ever get married, sex is never going to be right because he's going to be so obsessed with the pornography that's not even real anyways. I believe that God intended sex to be between a man and a woman, a husband and a wife.
Can you explain the images on the computer?
This is nothing right here.
Just because you're not out with some other woman doesn't mean that you're not being unfaithful to our marriage.
And what else do you need? What do you need?
I want my husband to be faithful. I want my husband to be a father to his children. I don't want him in his office watching pornography and telling me that he's trying to meet deadlines.
It's said that the greatest myth about pornography is that nobody gets hurt. Some even argue that porn is a healthy outlet for men and women alike. But has this really proven to be the case? Or does an addiction to porn create a kind of shadow person, someone who ends up leading a double life? One that the rest of those in his world can only wonder about. And when his dark secrets are finally brought into the light, what will be revealed? One who understands the dark temptations of pornography is former Penthouse producer J. Gator Henry, who claims he narrowly escaped a lifestyle that became so extreme it almost landed him in prison.
I'll say that, but for the grace of God, there go I when I see these men that are being arrested on the news.
As a former producer for Penthouse magazine, Gator rubbed elbows with some of the big celebrities in Hollywood, including Ozzy Osbourne and Pamela Anderson. And as you would expect, his work exposed him to countless Penthouse models.
Man, it was an ego rush to be around the most beautiful women in the world and then running around naked. And to a lot of men in America, I had the dream job. I mean, I was their hero. I was doing what everybody thought was the greatest thing in the world that a man could be doing for a profession.
Gator believes his addiction to pornography began with a troubled childhood.
My uncle had molested me when I was a child, and he ended up confessing that to me prior to his death from AIDS a few years ago, so I had that event in my life, and then I also remember when I was young finding a penthouse in my father's bedroom closet. And boy, I thought that was the greatest thing since sliced bread when I found that thing. And when you're at that age and everything else, and so I immediately was hooked on the whole thing. So it's kind of interesting that everything turned around and ended up working for Penthouse. And pornography, especially printed pornography, people think that Penthouse or Playboy or whatever is innocent. And I'm here to say that it's absolutely not. Having also a drug past myself, marijuana. As marijuana is a stepping stone in the drug world, Penthouse magazine or Playboy magazine is a stepping stone in the porn world. You start there, it's not going to end there.
Gator claims that the steps on his journey through pornography led him into deeper and darker levels of perversion. Eventually, he found himself on the brink of criminal behavior.
It got so bad where I would get on the internet. Again, I was just consumed. The ages of the girls I was looking at, in order for me to get the rush and to get that tingle, that buzz that I wanted to get from the sexual side of it, what happens is you start looking at younger and younger images, younger and younger pictures of girls. And what happened for me one day was, the thought just slammed to me that I probably have done things and probably had images on my computer at that time that could put me in prison. I look at these men who abduct these young girls and they molest them and kill them, bury them alive or whatever they do, stab them multiple times and stuff. And I know that those men, like me, they didn't wake up, they didn't start off, they didn't grow up as little boys saying, oh, my ambition in life is grow up to be a child molester and killer. And I know for a fact, with everything in the marrow of my bones, because I've been there, I've walked and lived it, that pornography took them to that place where just your average Joe comes to a place in his mind and in his being where he's so consumed with that fulfillment of that lustful thought and pleasure, with that thought that he has to fulfill it. And the fantasy becomes so overpowering and so all-consuming. And those are the guys that go out and take these girls.
Thankfully, Gator Henry says that in his case, he never reached that point of criminal behavior. Today, he tells others he found strength to turn away from his dark addiction through his faith in God.
I remember it now, and I saw myself. How wretched I really was before him, and how I had sinned against him, and he'd been so merciful to me.
Dr. Judith Reisman has commented that in her more than 30 years of research, she has seen few, if any, escape their porn addiction except through anti-porn activism or faith-based programs. In Gator Henry's case, he says it was his Christian faith and the teachings he found in the Bible that kept him from becoming a sex offender.
And what delivered me, what took me out of that, was plain and simple. Nothing but the power of Jesus Christ and the power of His Spirit through the fear of God.
That fear might be summed up in the Gospel of Luke. When speaking about children, Jesus said, "It were better for a man that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and he cast into the sea, than that he should offend one of these little ones."